Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mike Keating, and on behalf of the MGAA, I'm delighted to welcome you to our briefing this afternoon, which is being delivered by Ecclesiastical. Before handing over to the presenters, can I please run through a few housekeeping points? Number one, please ensure your microphone and camera are off. If you'd like to ask a question, and we certainly encourage all questions, please use the chat button at the bottom of your screen. We will look to answer your questions during the Q&A session. They will remain anonymous. However, if we do not get enough time to answer all your questions, then we will look to address those post-event. Please provide your contact details so we can respond to you directly. The MGAA's programme of learning and insights has been accredited by the Chartered Insurance Institute for the quality of content and supporting materials, with CPD hours applicable if relevant to your ongoing professional development. The recording of this briefing will be available on our website and MGAA YouTube channel, with the PowerPoint presentation to follow post-event. And finally, very importantly, you'll be sent a feedback survey. Please do take time to complete this, which should take no more than 2 minutes, as this allows us to deliver the best quality event for our members. Okay, so today's briefing, how Ecclesiastical can complement your expertise and support growth, is been delivered by Richard Coleman, Managing Director, who incidentally has also held the post of CEO of an MGA, Mark Lewis, Underwriting Director, Chris Wizards, Schemes and Partnerships Director, and Simon McGill, UK Schemes Development Manager. So without further ado, Richard, over to you, and I'll let you make the introductions.
That's great. Thank you very much, Mike. And thank you very much for having us. And thank you very, very much to everyone that's joined. We really appreciate an hour of your time to talk to you about Ecclesiastical. I'm not going to go through what each of us does on this slide. I think probably the main point I want to make is, as well as going through everything we think is applicable to you as to why you should consider Ecclesiastical as a capacity provider for your MGA, I want to make one point about us as an organisation. The people you see actually on this screen are fundamentally decision makers. I've worked in one of the big composites. I've been MD. I've had my technical functions held separate. We are a very nuclear, very traditional insurance company. The people you see on this screen are the people that sit around our UK table. We know where all the decisions are made. Claims and underwriting report into one place. So between the four of us on this screen, we are fundamentally decision makers as to how we drive our UK business forward. And I think that's incredibly important and hopefully a real plus for us as a business. I think there's probably another reason I just want to highlight a little bit as to why we're different as well. We will touch a little bit on our ownership structure during this presentation and around our charitable purpose. But I think it drives something else that I think is really, really important when we talk about capacity provision to MGAs. We're owned by a charitable trust who have a very long-term view. They want us to develop the best possible business over the best possible time in order to deliver funds for charity. And that gives us a real sense of longevity of shareholder, a real sense of longevity of cycle. I've never seen us move our strategy quarter by quarter. We think genuinely generationally. And as leader of the business, that gives me incredible stability. And hopefully that plays out into how you see us as an MGA. Because as Mike says, I have been CEO of an MGA for a few years before I joined Ecclesiastical, and it was a very interesting experience. I think I always knew capacity provision was important for MGAs. I always knew knowing your stakeholders and decision makers was important. I always knew the longevity, sustainability, and stability of that carrier was important. One thing knowing it, it's another thing feeling it. And I think that's a really, really important thing that we bring to the table, amongst many other things that we will all talk to you about today. So if we skip onto the next slide, please. As Mike said, this presentation comes with points as well as prizes. It comes with CPD points. So there are some learning objectives that we'll be covering for you today. Hopefully you'll finish this knowing the benefits of working with Ecclesiastical. You'll be able to talk about the types of MGAs that we would like to try and support. something around our proposition, and we'll talk a bit about that unique business model and how it can benefit your customers. So we'll come back to this slide at the end, and we do welcome all feedback as whether we've got there. If we haven't, questions would be great. We'd really love to get some discussion going today. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Chris, and we're going to get a bit deeper into the benefits of working with Ecclesiastical.
Thank you, Richard. So this is what is Ecclesiastical's proposition to MGAs, or summarised as this is the what's in it for you slide. So Ecclesiastical has the potential to present a compelling alternative to the larger insurers in the market, as our capacity is not going to be behind multiple arrangements. So therefore conflict will be limited. We'll also support MGAs with elements of our broader proposition. We can offer on-demand technical expertise to the MGA if required. And that technical expertise can be underwriting, claims, risk management, marketing. We're not going to impose it, but when it comes from an award-winning teams, we believe it can add value to the MGAs. We know that service is important to MGAs. Mike often talks about this being a USP and part of the reason why MGAs succeed. So we want to empower you so as you can continue to deliver this. Service is important to us too. We have an NPS score of 47 and regularly appear at the top of the Grace Church service survey charts. So if we're involved in the transactional decision, we'll do so with service delivery in mind. We'll offer MGAs a clear run with exclusivity of capacity and no conflict with our open market products. We'll talk about this in more detail, but we have plans to work with no more than 5 MGAs, and we want these to be distinct and different. So if we're supporting you, we won't be supporting your competitor. We'll offer oversight and governance that complements your control framework. We've got more than 60 delegated authority arrangements in place, and that gives us the experience of what works. We recognise that an MGA's approach is unique to them, so we'll work with that rather than impose an off-the-shelf process. And Richard talked about our long-term strategy and view. This is implemented by an experienced and stable leadership team and provides the MGA with consistency and the strong A-rated capacity that benefits you as the MGA and your customers for the long term. So we'll go on to the next slide. So that's the what's in it for you, but of course there's got to be something that's in it for us too. So why are Ecclesiastical doing this? Well, MGAs gives us access to skills and expertise that we don't have, and the ability to grow into new areas outside of our core risk appetite. These will be new specialist areas and not core. They won't be similar to our core existing specialist areas. Mark will talk about the risk appetite in more detail shortly, but clearly we don't want to cannibalize our existing specialist offering. So it can be in more generalist segments, but where the MGA is able to differentiate their offering and compete sustainably with those larger generalists. Your offering might provide solutions that complement our existing risk appetite. Potentially your product could be sold alongside our own, but that's certainly not a requirement. And we will only work with MGAs who have a proven track record and experience in the sector that they're seeking capacity. And the reason we do that is because we understand and value expertise and specialism. It's far better for us to be working and supporting you than venture into something new on our own. But working with an MGA also extends our distribution. It provides us access to distribution that we would find difficult to access in our own right, either because of the method of trading or the product offering. And supporting an MGA can open up new strategic opportunities for us. But the key enabler for all of this is that we will work with established good quality MGAs to diversify our existing portfolio. And at that point, I hand over to Mark, who can take you through that in some more detail.
Thanks, Chris, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us. As Richard and Chris have said, Our MGAs are a really important part of the growth strategy, and what I'm going to sort of spend a few minutes talking through is what we're looking for in an MGA as we move forward. I think the first thing that I'd sort of talk about with some passion is the risk appetite. I think it's really important that we avoid that distribution conflict between our own specialist niches. So what we're looking for is a distribution that doesn't conflict with what we've got already, allowing you a clear run at the markets you're so close to. I think that's really important. UK based, we'll focus on UK based exposures. Again, we're not at a stage where we can consider overseas exposures. So absolute focus on UK based exposures is again another key requirement for us as we move forward. I think the most important thing here is fully delegated. We are looking to fully delegate underwriting authority here, trust you with the expertise that you have in your business. I think that's incredibly important. We'll work with you to set some controls and parameters, but fundamentally want you to run and take ownership of the portfolio that you're operating. From both an underwriting perspective and potentially claims as well, I think that's incredibly important. Again, specialist sectors, you've got a deep knowledge of the sectors that you're operating in. I think what we're looking to do is work with MGAs that have a deep knowledge, a specialist knowledge of the sectors that they're targeting is incredibly important. Again, clear difference. We sort of touched on this a couple of times and Chris referenced it in terms of being really clear that we're looking to create a difference between that of generalist markets, the difference between that of our specialist niches that we're currently operating in. We'll consider both lead 100% propositions. I think it's really important to note that we'll also consider follow line opportunities as well, consortium arrangements. They're all things we'd look to sort of discuss with you. Again, a track record of profitability. I think sustainability of an MGA, again, is incredibly important. So we're looking to work with MGAs that have a proven track record in terms of sustaining an MGA, but both in top line and importantly, sort of the broader performance in terms of profitability. I think it's really worth highlighting here that we will take a long-term view to this as well. We're looking to create long-term partnerships and work with you over a period of time. We accept there might be some bumps in the road on a number of these, and that's really important. True partnership, again, is incredibly important to us. We'll look at both commercial or specialist personal lines. I think we're really open to considering options across both of those sectors. We're really clear we're not looking to write motor. That falls outside of our appetite. So I think commercial lines, specialist personal lines, we'll consider both of those opportunities. In terms of the ambition, we're looking over the next few years to generate sort of £45 million worth of GWP in the MGA space. But as Chris said, we're looking for no more than 4 or 5 MGAs in that space to allow us to provide that dedicated level of service and work really closely with our MGA partners. So minimum entry level, we're looking for sort of £5 million in terms of GWP as a starting point. But again, work with you, support you in terms of growing that potentially beyond that figure as well. And I'll pass on to Simon, I think, in terms of walking through some of the next stages.
Thanks, Mark. Good afternoon, everybody. So what can you, as MGAs, expect from Ecclesiastical? Well, we're already substantially experienced of working with DA partners. We'll provide you with a 60-strong team of experts to complement your own expertise. That includes an assessment and onboarding team, a technical team for new and retained business, a development team to help you manage and grow your account, and a product and proposition team to support you with key regulations, including FVA and consumer duty. Underwriting guides will support yours, not impose our own. We know what works, and we've got a fair idea of what doesn't. All decision-making made in the UK. Fair value assessments, a regulatory requirement, yes, but also a way to help you sell and grow your product. We'll support and assist or lead on these dependent on your proposition. Oversight and governance. We will manage you via our existing framework. We can support you in updating this as we already manage more than 60 delegated authority binders. We have that proven track record. Next slide, please. And how else will you as a MGA benefit from working with Ecclesiastical? Plenty going on here. Let me call out one or two areas. Added value from our award-winning risk management and claims teams. On risk management, we can talk from building valuations all the way through to strategic risk management. And when it goes wrong, our market-leading claims team are renowned for their specialist knowledge and efficient service. Training, on and offline resources to help you with your daily challenges and support your clients. Regulatory updates, easy to use materials to keep you up to date with the latest regulatory changes. Insight and guidance. Our dedicated schemes team brings experience, the lessons we've learned and observations to a series of articles written by them, written for you. And finally, and most importantly, a different kind of insurer, our USP. Proudly part of the Benefact Group, Ecclesiastical is a unique financial services organisation. All of our available profits go to charities and other good causes. 230 million in the last decade. MGAs and customers can access our Movement for Good awards to help support the communities you serve. And the point here is we're not new to MGAA, but we've now got a defined and refreshed strategy. We've been a member since 2016, a proud sponsor since 2019. Please continue to come and talk to us at conference, come and talk to us at Capacity Exchange. We'll still continue to provide our specialist articles in your publications and maybe the odd article or 12 on LinkedIn. As Richard said, we're here behind MGAs for the long term. And our call to action is call us. We'd like to find out more about you, about your capacity and about your cycle capacity. Richard.
Thank you. Before I just kind of refresh on the learning objectives, I'm just going to try and wrap up and pull some of those elements together. I think hopefully what you're hearing from us is, look, we recognise we might not be the most obvious choice and brand for an MGA. I still have people in the market, it frustrates me deeply, who think of us as a church insurer. That's less than 15% of what we do. We're very proud of it. Got a lot of heritage from it, but it's less than 15% of what we do. We may not be regarded sometimes as most dynamic, and yet we've grown by nearly 85% over the last 5 years organically. So what we have is a very purposeful, dynamic business that has targets to continue to grow more. That £45 million number is something we think is probably right for the next couple of years, but something we might well continue to stretch above and beyond as we grow. We are a very driven team. Our purpose that we touched on really is quite compelling, we think. It pushes us to continue to try and grow our business so that we can deliver more to charity. And we do think that's actually potentially a really strong message for the right customer group as well. We're increasingly finding customers engaging with that purpose and wanting to do more in terms of where they see that their money goes. And brokers and MGAs that join us are part of that movement at Cycle for Good. Simon mentioned we've given away £230 million over the last few years. We're averaging about 25 million a year. And last year, the trust gave 25.5 million to around 1,500 individual charities. And it's only in seeing those where you can see the really, really compelling things that is done with that money. So in joining us, you join a business that is significantly trying to grow, significantly succeeding that, far more dynamic than I think some of our reputation may sometimes sit in the market. And hopefully during the course of today, we're giving you a sense of that dynamism. And the last thing I'll add in, I touched on the fact that we're decision makers, we're a tight team, we're good people. That's the other thing that does attract people in. We're a growing business. We've probably put on 150 people over the course of the last 5 years as well, and continuing to expand out. So I think we're a great partner. I think we can provide that stability. We can provide that longevity and crucially that access to good, sensible decision makers. I think Mark touched on the fact we see ourselves as long-term partners and we ride out bumps in the road should we need to do so together. So I'm hoping that we've hit your learning objectives here. We certainly try to describe the benefits of working with Ecclesiastical, both from a capacity but also regulation to the wider skill set. And hopefully we've also touched on the degree of autonomy that we look to drive whilst that support is available for our MGAs. We've summarised the type of MGAs that we'll support. As you can see, that's pretty broad, subject to the parameters that Mark talked about. And we talked a little about how that proposition can enable MGAs to continue to deliver great service. I think if anything, we've probably undersold the claim service. We've been number one in the Grace Church Independent Survey for every quarter in the last 2 or 3 years, I think, bar one. When we slipped down into second. And hopefully we've also touched on that unique business model and how we think that benefits both you and your customers in terms of longevity, sustainability and access to decision makers. So I'm hoping we've hit the mark and the CPD points do come into the bank. As Mike said at the beginning, we'd love to get into any questions that you either have as individual MGAs or indeed from the MGA themselves. We'd love a discussion and debate. If you want to pick that up one-to-one with us, Simon shared his contact details there, but we're all available to talk. So back over to you, I think, Mike.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for a very insightful presentation. I think it's always great when our insurer members sort of have that forensic view so that our MGA members can clearly see the areas you want to engage with from that perspective. So we have got some questions. I'd like to encourage all of you sort of are participating in this webinar to please use the chat button. So let's kick off with some questions. So Richard, I suppose one of the things I'd like to get your view on, certainly as the regulator is clearly looking at it, I know in home and travel at the moment, but likely to look at that in 2025, is around the Ecclesiastical's view around delegated claims authority. So, what is, a lot of our members, I would say 90% of our members do sort of either outsource claims or have a relationship with a TPA. And I'm sure we will be interested in your view in terms of that model.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as Mark and Chris touched on, the autonomy and the speed of response in an MGA and you being in control of your own destiny is a really, really important thing. So we do delegate claims handling authority. We delegate that actually within the sort of 40 or 50 or so schemes that we individually run at the moment. We obviously retain a bit of a regulatory responsibility about how those are done. So we're quite adept, I think, at running a good balance of a governance process that shows we can do that. So there's a degree of due diligence, there's a degree of understanding of the value chain, there's a degree of support if needed as well within our claim supply team. So we delegate the authority, we govern it properly, but I think we get the balance right in terms of how we oversee that, set it up, and for all of us show that we're managing that chain correctly. But probably the core messages, Mike, would be yes, we delegate claims authority. Yes, we understand that speed of response is important. And then we make sure that we're fulfilling our regulatory obligations and yours by conducting appropriate due diligence and setup.
Okay, thank you very much. So Mark, I think one to you actually. So a starting portfolio of 5 million is quite punchy. Are there any future plans to reduce this criteria to encourage smaller MGAs to look to partner with yourselves?
Good question. And we've set 5 million with that ambition of sort of targeting and working with no more than 4 or 5 over the next couple of years. And as Richard sort of articulated, that may change. And if there's a great MGA there that's currently at 3.5 million with a strong growth plan to get to 5 and beyond, we're open to those flexible sort of conversations and we'll be pragmatic. What we don't want to target is those small MGAs. I think if there's growth potential, and again we can quantify that growth and got some confidence in that growth, I think we'd actively engage in those conversations. But we put 5 million as a number. It's not a hard line in the sand. We will have pragmatic and flexible conversations around that. But it's really important that we do target risks of a size that allow us to collaborate and form a true partnership.
Okay, very clear. Thank you very much. I probably will open this up probably to you, Chris. It might be one of your colleagues, but a question: how would you plan to deal with any potential distribution clash within your own current business? Obviously something which MGA is always conscious of.
Yeah, and I think the nature of the business that we've got as a specialist insurer makes managing distribution conflict easier, but I don't think we can ever entirely eradicate it. So it'll be about going into any partnership with a clear understanding of where that conflict is likely to be. It would be, as we've said in the presentation, in terms of our true specialist areas, that's not where we're looking to support an MGA. You know, that we've got headroom in those specialist areas, we've got plans, targets, and the MGA appetite is to take us into newer areas. But there will be some of those newer areas that may provide some sort of potential conflict. But I think it's about, in our due diligence and assessment stage, of being really honest and really clear on both sides in terms of what that would look like. Now, there might be an offering that's out there that reaches a broker that won't trade with us as Ecclesiastical for whatever reason. Will they trade with us, or will they trade with an MGA knowing it's on Ecclesiastical paper? I don't know. But, you know, that sort of scenario would be the type of one that we want to get into to understand, is there something that the MGA is doing, reaching, that we wouldn't reach in our own way, in which case, absolutely, let's have a conversation. But I think if it's in an area that is rife with conflict, then I think it's sensible for us and the MGA to both say we're probably not the right partners, because we would have a challenge in fulfilling the growth potential of the MGA, because we've got our own strategy as a specialist, easy for me to say, as a specialist insurer. So yeah, I think it's just about being upfront and honest.
Okay, thank you for that. So please keep your questions coming. So we've still got plenty of time. So probably one from me, if I may. So in terms of compliance, and obviously we talk a lot about proportional sort of regulation. Sort of some of the mood music I've received is that the amount of investment insurers are having to make into compliance could actually sort of, you know, impact MGA's financial models in terms of where that compliance cost is passed across in terms of that modelling. And we know in terms of MGA modelling, in financial modelling, can be quite marginal. I don't know who would like to take this. Do you see any continuing impact in terms of the MGA models with yourselves and that capital because of the increasing cost of compliance?
I'm happy to pick that one up, and my colleagues can jump in with any additions or views. There's no doubt that the cost of regulation is something we will have to be mindful of. We've invested probably most specifically around product oversight governance in particular over the course of the last few years. So I think we've got actually quite a sort of scaled and effective unit focusing on those things. To the point about how does it affect MGA financials, look, as you pointed out, we have to be really, really clear about where MGAs add value. And actually for us, one of the reasons you've got a very, very clear message from Mark and the team around we want to be able to fully delegate is because we want to make sure we're not incurring double costs. So we do look, when we look at MGAs, the genuine end-to-end value chain. What do you do? What do we do? How do we apply the appropriate level of costing for our oversight versus yours? So we are very aware of the kind of expenses that it's realistic to apply to an MGA. We're confident we can work within those. And we're confident we can hit the kind of target loss ratios that will come out. So we're very practical and pragmatic about where we set the incremental costs. And I think at an incremental level, Mike, I think those are quite manageable if you scale and set up your operations in the right way, which, reflect back on the claims question, I think we've done that in the right way. If I take it into things like product oversight, I think we do that in the right way as well. So you can benefit from some of those scale costs, and we make sure that the incremental costs are something that the model itself can bear.
Thank you. Any of Richard's colleagues want to add to that?
I mean, the only thing I would add is, our experience in terms of the delegated authorities that we've got gives us the, experience of managing sort of governance and oversight I think in terms of the regulatory requirement, it clearly it needs to be done. And that was because, you know, they had evidence that at times it wasn't being done. But I don't think that leads to a conclusion that we both need to be doing it. And I think collaboration at this point is so key. You know, we've said within the slide deck, you know, we don't have a set format of what governance looks like, what the control framework looks like, because it's going to be different by MGA. You know, it depends if it's systems driven or whether it's an underwriting authority framework will determine that. The key thing for us is understanding that the MGA understands their risks and what they're doing about managing their risks, and that we can then capture that as our oversight of the oversight. But if we both end up doing the governance, it doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help the financial model, and it doesn't set the MGA free to go and do what they're good at. But we do within that due diligence piece, that's a key bit for us. And our experience of the MGAs so far has been that MGAs are rightly proud of their control frameworks and actually want to show them off to us. But as I said earlier on, it's one of those on-demand sort of expertise services as well. We have got that capability. So if the MGA wanted somebody to kind of, you know, kick the tires on their work, review it or whatever, then we're more than happy to do that. But the main piece of our working with an MGA is tell us what your control framework is and let us understand it and let us know how we can work together and complement that rather than duplicate it.
Okay, thank you. Simon, you know, very keen not to leave you out of the Q&A. So I think your colleagues have sort of kindly you know, articulated risk appetite, what's in scope, what's out of scope. Clearly, motor is out of sort of scope from that perspective. So one of the other sort of key areas for our members in particular is around the engagement and the onboarding process. And that can be frustrating from both parties, and it can cause quite a lot of sort of challenges if there's not transparency right at the start of any deal. So you know, could you sort of give a sort of example and perhaps some insight into how Ecclesiastical approach, you know, having a shaken hands, you know, how you approach that onboarding process and maybe commit to what's your optimum timetable there. You were the last on the Q&A, so I've really put you on the spot there. There you go.
And you've asked for a timescale, crikey. Thanks. I think I'd answer that as follows. We touched on the presentation about dedication and experts, and I think yes, we hear that more than anything. That frustration. We used to probably be able to blame technology and lawyers. Now it's slightly different. But how do we get it to market? So I think first and foremost, we talked about that dedicated new business team. So the people that will do the assessments, the people that will work with you, reviewing your capacity will be the same people that are onboarding. So dedicated product team, dedicated project team to help us bring it to market. Weekly meetings, face-to-face meetings. Our new business journey, our new schemes journey is over, I think 100 steps. It might have probably grown by the time of this webinar, but it's thorough, it's complete. It means that we take our due diligence really seriously. We don't want to bring a second version to markets. You know, it's a full and thorough process. So we'll introduce you to the team. We'll introduce you to the project management team that help do that. Dedicated experts throughout the business. In terms of timescale, we like to think ourselves as quick and thorough builders, but I think, you know, it's important to get it right. So it's not unusual for us to bring capacity and schemes to market in weeks, and I think we're proud of that quite rightly. We need both sides pulling the same way. If it's a 3 to 6 month piece of work, then we're quite happy to stand behind that as well. But I think see us, meet us, see the experts that will bring the capacity to market, and if we can do it in weeks, and there's some distressed business out there or capacity walking away, then we're absolutely able to go as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. You add something, Chris? Sorry, apologies.
I was just going to add to it. I think as well, this piece around us looking to do probably no more than 5 as well. It today is a great opportunity for us to start to plan that in terms of those 5 for people who are either on the call today or listen to the recording, if you want to be one of those 5, then let's start that conversation now, because in terms of timing, it really is a case of how complex is it? Now, what is the MGA's time frame in terms of existing capacity and notice periods and the like? But the longer we have to plan for it, the better for all of us. And again, that's based on our experience of onboarding 60 DAs over many years. Richard talked about targets and ambitious targets, and that means I've got those ambitious targets written into my scorecard. So there is a pressure point in terms of that, but also there is I think with Richard's experience and Mark's experience, there is a reality of how long these things take to onboard and how long it takes to get them right as well. So we have a target, we will hit that target, but it's all about kind of the planning stage. So you'll know as an MGA where you are in your capacity sort of cycle, and let's engage early to understand what that cycle is and what part we might be able to play, and what part today's proposition presentation plays in perhaps giving you the chance to question what your placement is for the future. So we can do it very quickly, but we would prefer to work with an MGA over a period of time to do it properly. I guess is the way of sort of framing that.
Okay, thank you.
Big target, so please do number.
Yeah, thank you. Again, we've still got some time for questions. Mark, if I could pivot back to you, you referenced around both risk appetite and the fact that you were open to sort of discuss in terms of follow lines in particular, and obviously we see across the market some quite innovative program management which MGOs are deploying. Can you sort of share a little bit around what that follow line may or may not look like in terms of meeting your acceptance criteria?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, it's a really good question. I think it's a difficult question because at this stage, I think the appetite is broad. I think that's the first point I'd make, is that we're here to listen, and if there's solutions, I think for us it needs to be meaningful. So, would we sit on a panel with a number of insurers as part of a consortium? Yes, we would, but we'd still want some meaningful involvement. We wouldn't want to. What we're not looking to provide here is naive capacity. We want to be involved, and for all of the good reasons that Chris and Simon sort of articulated around our unique service proposition, what we're really good at, we don't want to walk past all of that, because we think that forms an integral part of the proposition. So look, for us, it's about deploying meaningful capacity, having a meaningful voice at a panel of insurers. And again, but we have significant capacity here as a business. We have significant capacity from a property and a casualty perspective. We have the ability to lead and write a number of these programs 100%. So I think it depends what the opportunity is. But again, we're really open to sort of sensible conversations. Again, we'll be dynamic in terms of, we've got a number of experienced underwriters in the business. We're happy to look at complex program structures as well. So appreciate I haven't quite given you what you're asking for, Mike, but I think we'll be really open, really flexible around finding solutions for MGAs.
Okay, I think that's a useful insight, actually, Mark. Actually, so that I think the fact you're sharing with the participants and those who look at the webinar recording, that you're open for that sort of conversation, which is a good starting block, and you haven't highlighted anything which is completely out of scope on that. So that's very useful for our members. Okay, so any more questions from our participants at all? Any questions for any of our gentlemen as they're here? We'll give it a minute, see if anyone's picks up anything else the gentlemen and we haven't covered on the previous questions.
The only thing I say while we're waiting, Mike, is if people want to pick up a one-to-one dialogue, then they're very happy to do that. So we shared Simon's email in this deck, but feel free to reach out to any of us.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, on that basis then, so many thanks to Simon, Richard, Mark and Chris and Ecclesiastical overall for taking the time to talk to the MGAA members today. Again, very, very insightful. It was absolutely fantastic when our valued sort of insurer members come and talk around their appetite and and etc. So just before we finish, I would like to remind you to complete our feedback survey, which is very important. Tell us how you found our briefing today. Your views are very important, both to obviously our host today and our guests, as well as ourselves at the MGAA in terms of feedback and in terms of our future sort of program or events. So thanks all for joining this afternoon. I can't believe I'm saying this because I think it's the first time, but for those who I don't get to meet between now and Christmas, everyone have a fantastic Christmas and New Year, which I really can't say it without laughing. But thanks very much again, Ecclesiastical. Thanks for attending and have a great rest of the week and afternoon. All the best.
Thanks all.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.